All right, back today, Friday, for the free-for-all, and then I'm off next week. So if you want to talk to me, now's your chance for a week. And the following week, looking forward to having Arlen coming back to be a co-host, at least periodically. And I think that will really help make the program a little more dynamic, a little more exciting, because Arlen and I disagree on the strategy we need to get to a better place. I think we have the same goal, a society where everyone has enough, no one has too much, clean, green environment, the whole 9 yards, but we have such a strong dispute over how to get there. I don't believe the Democratic Party is an ally whatsoever. I think the Democratic Party is a major part of the problem. They are part of the duopoly. And until we take on the duopoly and come up with an alternative to both the Republicrats and the Democrats, I don't think things can get better. I think they will only get worse. And we are watching our planet, our ecology, our system unravel in real time. So we just don't have the luxury of continuing to pursue what has proven to be a disastrous, in my opinion, strategy. And that's what we're going to discuss today. So call in if you disagree. Call in if you do agree. 240-363-7019. I'll go to a little after 1 since I'm starting a little bit late this morning. Sorry about that. Some technical issues held me back. One thing that Arlen has pointed out that I think has really caused me to have to do some soul searching is that I spend so much more time criticizing the Democrats than I do the Republicans, even though on balance, I think the Republicans are probably even worse. As you can see from my comment there, on balance, the Republicans are even worse. So I've really thought about why. Why do I do that? Why do I spend much more time taking on the Democratic Party, the Democratic members, rather than the Republicans, if I think the Republicans are even worse? Now, I'll say the Democrats don't come through on the climate crisis. Their actions have exacerbated it, but they do pay lip service to it. They acknowledge it's real, whereas Republicans don't even, they pretend. I mean, they are in denial. So I guess one is worse. I guess it's worse to say you don't believe the sky is blue than to acknowledge it's blue, but keep pumping, toxic gray chemicals into the sky. So it's going to start turning, or it's already, turning gray. I don't know. I mean, I'm going to go with, at least if you admit it's real, then we can say, let's figure out how to stop it. I think the Democrats are a little better on identity issues, although they use them for their own purposes, as we'll find out. But I still spend much more time, virtually all the time I do, spend on air criticizing the duopoly. The focus is on the Democratic half of that duopoly. Part of it is I'm a natural-born contrarian. I'm talking to Democrats on this program much more than Republicans. The people I spend my days with are Democrats, not Republicans. Or progressives in any case, who are always telling me you can't vote for Cornel West. You have to vote. You can't vote if you voted for Jill Stein. It's your fault. And so being a natural-born contrarian, I'm going to argue with the people I'm around, and those are Democrats and progressive Democrats, not Republicans. When I'm with Republicans, I have some groups on Facebook of which I'm a member that are much more conservative, and I do argue with them. I post all the data that proves the climate crisis is real and it's human caused. I do point out the cruelty of for-profit healthcare and urge them to join me in supporting Medicare for all. So I do try to tailor my arguments to the audience to whom I'm speaking. I think we have to be willing to acknowledge that the group that we're a member of, right? We have to fight to make it a better group, to have it live its ideals, its claimed ideals, to live up to them. And the Democrats most certainly do not. So probably a big part of the reason I go after the Democrats is I'm a contrarian. Also, I think there's some real legitimate reasons as well. People who claim to be, who identify as Democrats, are often very self-righteous. And they tell me they're better than Republicans and how bad Republicans are. So my response to that is, okay, well, then it's important to you to be a moral person, or at least to believe that you're a moral person. I think to a large degree, Republicans will argue, as you hear libertarians argue, many of them will say, and I know Limbaugh used to say this, I don't really care about other people. That's their problem. And in fact, just caring about them makes things worse. We substitute our values for theirs and tell them they need to work and they need to have enough to eat. But if they don't want to work, then they presumably don't want to eat. So we shouldn't even be giving them food. That's sort of the Limbaugh position, right? Or if they don't want to get a job with healthcare, then I guess they don't get healthcare. And we shouldn't insist that they have it. And that's a libertarian position as well. Well, healthcare is, if you want it, you'll get it. And if you don't want it, too bad, you don't get it. Well, I think that's a load of crap. I make a certain assumptions about human beings, that we all want to have enough to eat, that we all want a safe, secure place to put our head at night, that we all want healthcare and deserve healthcare and should have healthcare. And those are aspects of the human condition that to me are non-negotiable. So I totally reject the Republican argument, the libertarian argument. But if you embrace that argument, then when I say we need Medicare for all, you're like, well, why? Who cares? So what? So some people don't have healthcare. That's their problem. That's not my problem. If I say I want a clean, green environment, then the response is, well, go live in someplace where it's clean. If you don't want to, you don't have to, right? That's their argument. Or it's even worse in socialist countries. That's their argument. Trying to keep the environment clean, putting regulations on people actually is part of the problem. That's their argument. Now, it's a load of crap. It's wrong, but it's hard for me to dispute it, right? I mean, what am I going to say if that's your value system? But with Democrats, with progressives, they, I believe, kind of see things the way I do in terms of how things should be. And since the Democrats have in power, Democrats in power, who am I talking about? The Clintons, Obama, the Progressive Caucus. Democrats in power have not walked the walk. They have talked the talk on occasion, but so often not walked the walk. And my part of why I do this is to persuade those who I think want a society that looks the way I do to recognize, as I do, and I could be wrong, and this is something I'll debate with Arlen, that we're not going to get where we need to go. We're not going to be able to save our planet and what's left that's beautiful on it by continuing to do the same old. That Democrats aren't on our side. All right, 240-363-7190. Hope you'll join me. So one Democrat, and a big reason, I want to say a big reason that, I feel betrayed. Let me say it this way. And this is to go on to, why I do what I do, why I'm so critical of the Democrats and not as critical of the Republicans. I used to be, by the way, more critical of the Republicans. I feel, and we'll get to Al Gore and Ralph Nader in a little bit. I just feel betrayed. I mean, Democrats that I put my trust in, that I put my faith in, that I put my money, that I've put my money in, I don't believe are on my side. I used to think they were on my side, but I no longer do. They act too frequently counter to what I think is right, counter to what I believe is in my best interest and in the best interest of my country. They do this over and over and over again. And for that reason, I am like a lover scorned, that's who I'm mad at. Because they have betrayed my trust in them over and over. They've gotten over on me. They've taken advantage of me. And here's somebody who meets that test 100%. AOC, when she was, I guess her first, was it 2018 or was it 2016? I honestly don't remember. I'm going to go with, I don't know. I can't even remember. But let's just say it was 2018 for the sake of argument. I believe it was, but maybe not. Well, no, because when Trump was elected in 2016, so I guess AOC was also. And she sat outside Pelosi's office, right? She started some kind of a protest there. Because the Democrats still had, I believe, they had a House majority at that point. Maybe not. Did they get back in 2018? I don't remember. They did get it. Yeah, I don't know. Who knows? She has not been on the side of poor, struggling, working people. She has consistently, in my view, betrayed us, betrayed them. If I'm not going to call myself a working person, maybe I don't deserve that. I'm not, I don't fit in academically to that. Ocasio-Cortez has simply, over and over, said the right things, but the actions that she has taken have harmed progressives. She has taken the wrong side on issues. So this is a really good example. AOC has carried water for Joe Biden. Now, she just endorsed him. And this article, AOC is just a regular Democrat now. By the way, well done, New York Magazine, which was a disaster when it comes to attacking Dr. West and saying we can't support Dr. West. And the case for Dr. West's candidacy is very, very weak. I think that's what they argued. So I give them all props for having Freddie DeBoer's piece here. AOC is just a regular Democrat now. And DeBoer takes her to task for her most recent action where she endorsed Joe Biden, pointed out just as I have. There's no need to. She didn't need to endorse Joe Biden. Not at all. She could have sat silent. She could have, said, I'm going to support Dr. Cornel West. And, Democrats are not supposed to endorse non-Democrats if they're running against Democrats. So what? She's elected. What are they going to do to her? They can't do anything to her. She could say Dr. West embodies my values, which he most certainly does if her values are what she says they are. But she didn't do that. She endorsed Biden. Not acceptable. Not acceptable to progressives. Clearly wrong-headed. Clearly misguided. So here's what DeBoer says and points out her hypocrisies. When Biden was getting criticized for perpetuating Trump's separating families at the border policy, for locking up immigrants without any kind of process whatsoever, rather than say, yeah, this is really bad. I was hoping Biden would be a little better. I'm not seeing it right now. Or he may be a little better, but he's not good enough. But instead, AOC took a page out of the neoliberal book, the Hillary Clinton book. And she said, oh, well, how can you possibly, what are you saying to black and brown people if you're going to say Biden's just as bad as Trump? Which I don't think people were necessarily saying. What they were saying is, hey, he's just locking up just as many people as Trump. He's keeping the same policies at the border as Trump. He's trying to, whitewash what he's doing, but he's doing it. And of course, she, as a loyalist to the party, not to the policy that she claimed to support, attacked critics of the Democratic Party, attacked those who supported her, who were on her side. She enforced loyalty to the party with vague accusations of racism and references to people of color and other marginalized groups. Yet, at that very same moment, the Biden administration was busily deporting tens of thousands of undocumented immigrants, almost all of them brown and black. So I will say this, that Trump's policy was as bad, if not worse. As far as I know, my understanding is that they did stop the policy. The Biden administration did stop the separating families, hopefully. It wasn't quite as bad what Biden did. So is it fair for me to only criticize Biden and spend very little time on Trump? Probably not. But I will say when Trump was president, and I wasn't doing this program, but when Trump was president, that was the area of his presidency that I was most harshly critical, was the abuse, the mistreatment, the persecution of immigrants. And I had a conversation with a Trump supporter, and that man asked me, what's the worst thing about Trump? Why do you think, don't you agree it's not fair the way the media treats Trump? And I said, yeah, I think in some ways it is unfair. I think that the media, MSN, whatever, CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post, yeah, I think they have a bias. They're not being objective. Clearly, they're partisan. So he said, well, why don't you like Trump? What do you have against Trump? And I said, well, the policy of mistreating people at the border is horrible. It's wrong. This was when Trump was president. And the response was, well, Obama did it too. And I said, yeah, he did. But it wasn't as bad, but it was bad. But yeah, you're absolutely right. But you asked me what I don't like about Trump, and this is something I really, really don't like about Trump. I'll get to something else about Trump. I will also cop to this later on in the program. I will cop to something else about Trump. I'm probably a little bit more, I'm a little bit less informed about some of areas of the Trump administration because I haven't really cared as much. I was always of the mindset he shouldn't be president. I was always of the mindset he's not qualified. And I don't look for areas to debunk those who claim he is. It's just an assumption, an understanding I have with people who I converse with, including you. Trump's bad. But I also make the point that he's not really much worse than Obama in many areas, or may not even be as bad as Obama in some areas, and not as bad as W. And of course, we had that conversation. I had that with Arlen. I, modestly think I cleaned his clock on that. I think, and I hope that Arlen, was reconsidering his claim that Trump is the worst based on that conversation, because I think we have to learn. We have to learn from others. We have to be willing to reconsider, as I hope that I am. And as I acknowledge, I may not have been as critical of Trump as I should have been. All right. So other areas, though, where I feel truly betrayed. When Ocasio-Cortez ran, and I keep thinking it was 26, I really had optimism that she might be somebody who was going to be making things different. Right? Just like I had hope for Bernie. Bernie didn't win. AOC did. And here again, DeBoer points out where AOC just simply betrayed the working class. Much as some African-American members of Congress betray fellow African-Americans, the way Jim Clyburn, with his staunch support of for-profit Big Pharma, has totally screwed poor, struggling, and working African Americans and white people in South Carolina. And tragically, John Lewis, a hero of the civil rights movement, was one of the biggest recipients of Big Pharma money before he died in Congress. And again, betrayed his constituents. So here's where AOC does the same thing. She publicly castigated railway companies and demanded better conditions for workers, then voted to forbid them from striking. So she joined the Biden administration in that, pursuing that policy. She claimed, this is what they wanted. If they wanted to strike, I would have said, sure, they didn't want to strike. And of course, the Railroad Workers United said that's a load of crap. That's not true. We never wanted our right to strike to be taken away from us. And as DeBoer points out, this is an unforgivable betrayal of basic values. DeBoer also points out in this article how the United Parcel Service workers, the UPS workers, what can Brown do for you, were able to negotiate a much better contract with UPS than many thought they could because they had the threat of strike in their back pocket. And they were clearly serious about striking. AOC took that tool, that very powerful tool, out of the railway workers' kit and left them with a much weaker contract than they might have otherwise been able to negotiate. She betrayed the working people for the railroads. How about foreign policy? This is not area, she used to be legitimately, I think, very correctly critical of Israel for persecuting Palestinians, demanding that we shouldn't be giving all this foreign aid to them. And yet, when push comes to shove, when Mama Bear Nancy Pelosi says, you got to vote, you can't vote against that Iron Dome, she might cry, but then she still voted present rather than no on funding it. I remember, and this is like, and I want to get back just real quick because this is kind of interesting, and I saw this about that argument, right, that where AOC said, I got to wonder what you're thinking, what you're saying to our black and brown fellow citizens when we criticize Joe Biden. How can we possibly be doing that? What are we saying to them? And it reminds me of an argument I had when I criticized Pelosi 3 years ago for that exact vote, where she refused to vote no on Iron Dome. And I said on Facebook, I said, she talks a good talk, she talks big, AOC, but as soon as Mama Bear comes around and shows her claws, AOC falls like a cheap tent. And the response was, don't ever call, this was from someone on Facebook, don't ever call a woman, especially an older woman, Mama Bear. That was supposedly my horrible crime, just like you can't, allegedly, if you say anything negative about the Democratic Party, especially a woman or a person of color in the Democratic Party, somehow you're racist or you're sexist. So I was called sexist for referring to Pelosi as Mama Bear. Now, of course, that quote, Mama Bear, came directly from AOC. She called Pelosi Mama Bear, and she said it as though it was an endearment. Oh, Mama Bear's there to take care of us. And there was clearly, when she said it, some resentment, some disagreement, because the little cubs aren't always going to agree with the mama, but they don't really have much choice now, do they? And that was kind of what she was saying. And this Facebook person was like really furious at me or claimed to be for calling Pelosi Mama Bear, even though that was a direct quote from AOC. I pointed that out. I said, the term Mama Bear was used by Pelosi, and by AOC to describe Pelosi, and I linked to it, and this critic of mine, no response, didn't care, doesn't matter, just don't do it. What kind of how do we have a conversation? How do we come to agreements whatsoever if that's how we respond to those that we disagree with? Or that we can't even come up with an argument except don't call her Mama Bear. It's ludicrous. It means we can't really solve our problems. It's very, very, very. Let me see if I can get that. I'm just trying to. Well, let me get to the next Democrat I'm going to go after, and it's funny because I said I get it. Oh, but Arlen makes a fair point about me that I'm maybe too obsessed with the Democratic misdeeds. Now, again, I think that those who say they're Democratic are more likely to ultimately agree with me when it comes to many of to our goals, right? Universal health care, a clean, green environment. Those are policies that Democrats, I believe, embrace. And I think to some extent, some of you are peace, right? Peace is a democratic value, I always thought. I think to some extent, some of you are mistaken as to whether the Democratic Party is a party of peace, as to whether the Democratic Party is a party of the environment. I think maybe you think it is when it isn't. So Barack Obama often extolled, I've had people say to me, he's the best president in my lifetime, people who are as old as I am. So their lifetime might include, I was born actually during JFK's final 6 months in office, which, he was murdered, a little bit, I guess was it November? Yeah, so about about half a year before he was murdered. So I include him in my list of presidents during my lifetime, and I don't consider Obama to be the best or even close. I've always said it's LBJ because of civil rights, because of the Great Society, and because I do give him a pass, probably unfair, I'm too generous in my grading for him, because in fact, he did escalate in Vietnam, but I've always been willing to give him a bit of a pass for that horrible mistake, for the war crimes that we committed in Vietnam, in part because I think he felt constrained to go into Vietnam with both guns blazing in return for getting civil rights through. So I give him that pass, even though it was a terrible, terrible thing. So I, because of civil rights and Great Society, I give it to LBJ. After him, I don't know, probably Carter. Peace, he brought us Camp David, although he also pursued some neoliberal policies. And then I think it's really, really tough. I don't know where I would put probably Obama a little bit ahead of Clinton, but on the other hand, there was more peace during Clinton's reign, although he did, in fact, go into, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia. So, when we bombed Africa under him, I think Obama was more of a war maker. So from the African exponent, Barack Obama is a war criminal whose crimes against humanity must be punished. He was a reign of terror. I think this is fair. This comes from the Harvard Political Review. At least they quote from it. The Harvard Political Review recently came out calling Obama a war criminal. This article came out before the Harvard Political Review, but some of the information that was in that article by the Political Review, the Harvard Political Review, is included in this African exponent. So they kind of went back and forth. It's kind of a dialogue between the African exponent and the Harvard Political Review. So the African exponent I looked into a little bit. I want to see, was this some sort of neoliberal papers? Do they have some sort of bias against, are they going to go after Obama, who was a neoliberal president? Are they very conservative? Are they a Republican front? And I do not find that. I do not find that in the African exponent. I may be wrong. I don't know much about this group. But they seem truly to be trying to provide objective news about Africa. And this seems like a fair assessment. And of course, Somalia is an African country, and the drone program that Obama pursued with such vigor was targeted to a very significant degree Somalia. So it seems fair. He also was behind the killing of Gaddafi, and Gaddafi was an African leader, and what he did, what that did to Libya and Northern Africa was an absolute atrocity, a huge atrocity. So I think it's fair. It's fair. Was Trump worse? Maybe. In some ways, yes. All right, let's play this clip. This is about why, and again, why am I talking about Democrats right now? I want you to support Dr. Cornel West for president. I don't think that many Republicans will. Maybe some will. If you're a Republican and you're watching me, I know some do. I hope you'll support Dr. West for president. Maybe you'll say, hey, Hal's a straight shooter. He's willing to go after the Democrats. He's nonpartisan. And that's true. I'm really pretty darn nonpartisan. So if you believe in, the Constitution, you believe in free speech, if you believe in due process of law, if you believe in peace, if you believe that everyone should have enough and no one should have too much, I urge you, I counsel you to support Dr. Cornel West for president, not even to get involved with the Democratic primary. Just tell everyone you know, tell the Democrats you're supporting Dr. West. They must understand that until they pursue pro-worker, pro-peace, pro-environment policies rather than the converse, which is what they support, right? I mean, all their policies are just the opposite of that. Pro-war, anti-environment. We talked about the climate cataclysm and how Biden, just yesterday, has continued to greenlight more drilling, more extraction, including in environmentally fragile areas. And now AOC voting with Biden to take away the right to strike from railway workers and voting for Iron Dome, voting for war. So that's why I do this. I want you to vote for Dr. Cornel West for president. I think he's the right choice. I don't think there's any question he's the best choice by a huge margin. It's not even close. This is not 2000. 2000, we had a pretty good Democrat running, I believe. Far from perfect, pretty good. And we had a really, really, really bad Republican, one of the worst presidents ever, arguably the worst president ever, ran in 2000 for president and won, or at least cheated or however got it done. So in that case, the third party candidate, Ralph, or the third or fourth, because there was also another, I guess there was a libertarian, he is responsible. That's not the case in 2016. That will not be the case in 2024 when we have only bad options except for the Green candidate.
If it's true, it is a big, big scoop. Coming, of course, from John Howman and Mark Halperin, the authors of that new book, Double Down, Game Change 2012. They claim that on the campaign trail in 2012, President Obama told aides that he is, quote, really good at killing people. According to the authors, Obama made the comment last year while discussing drone strikes. And while the White House hasn't officially commented, Obama advisor Dan Pfeiffer said over the weekend that neither he nor the president have read the book. Arthur, that's like the lamest excuse ever for like a quote that's attributed to you, right? I haven't read the book. So does that mean if he never reads the book, he never has addressed the fact that he walked around saying he's good at killing people?
He might as well have said, at the end of the day, it is what it is. So we noticed.
All right, I'm going to stop it there. So this is Huffington Post. I guess they feel they have to cover this. But I don't get the chuckles, right? Mark Lamont Hill and this guy Delaney are chuckling. Is it funny that Obama, I don't think there's any question, says, I'm really good at killing people? I have it in my mind. I was trying to get the actual video of Obama saying that, but I couldn't find it. But it's in my mind that I can hear his voice, the way he talks. Turns out I'm pretty good at killing people. I didn't expect that, or something of that sort. So I wanted to get that. I couldn't find that. Maybe it's been taken off. Maybe there's just no way you can't get it. Maybe the Wayback Machine. I don't know. I'll look for it. If I can find it, I will. Maybe I'm mistaken and I'm just remembering something that never happened. Maybe there was no video of him actually making that statement. But you'll hear more, but there's no denial. And this is, of course, Huffington Post, Neo, very hard, Democratic partisans, and they can't deny it. They're covering the story. I give them props. I don't think it's worth a chuckle, however.
Barack Obama, that you were very good at killing people, having offed thousands with drone strikes, and of course, your most famous victim, what's his name, Osama bin Laden. And but the quote, the relish that he seems to take in the taking of human life is sort of unseemly, I'd say, and not the best thing for a politician to say.
Not the best.
So pretty nasty stuff, and that denial that you just reported is not a very strong denial at all, is it?
No, he didn't say. It's like he didn't say I didn't say it. He didn't say that's disturbing or that's disgusting or that's outside of my character. He said I can't. I haven't read the book. I'm busy.
He couldn't say no. Obama doesn't like killing people. He
Right.
couldn't even say that.
Yeah, no. Although that would be awesome if he started speaking about himself in the third person.
All right, so there it is. No question that is from Huffington Post. And I did find it very unseemly that the two, the host, Lamont Hill, and the reporter, Arthur Daly, were chuckling. I mean, it's not funny. It's really terrifying. It's really scary. I mean, and Obama took away a lot of our rights. He spied on us, locked people up through the FISA court system, which is totally untransparent, and killed thousands of civilians with the drones. So yes, it's very, very fair to call him, I believe, a war criminal. And here is from the article in the African Exponent. It was Obama who continuously, as if in a warlike video game, rained bombs on women and children in Syria and Yemen. Now, so of course, this is the African Exponent. So it's the focus is a little bit more in Africa, I believe. But let's just see if we can get this so you can read it. It was Obama who continuously, as if in a war, and I guess I got to put that down so you can see it, who continuously, as if in a video game, rained bombs on women and children in Yemen and in Syria. The most ever in the region. It was Obama who stamped the continuous presence of the American military, which is literally a death machine in Iraq and Afghanistan, never extending an arm of reconciliation with Cuba, Venezuela, Iran, and Zimbabwe. And again, from the African Exponent, during his presidency, Barack Obama approved the use of 563 drone strikes, killing approximately 3,797 people, and 54 alone in Pakistan, 100 killing 89 civilians. So absolutely horrible, right? I mean, I don't know if this were a Republican, I think we would be all outraged. And I do remember during the W presidency, there was a lot of peace. The peace movement was somewhat, was somewhat in ascendancy. We really had people out on the streets protesting on a weekly basis. And once Obama was elected in 2008, everyone just sort of went home, except for the libertarians. Give them credit. So I mentioned that this comes from, this is joint work with the Harvard Political Review. In the Exponent, the drone, quoting the Political Review, citing it, the drone operations in Somalia and Yemen also were very destructive, including 21 children, 10 under the age of 5, 12 women, 5 pregnant, were murdered in the strike. So, totally indefensible. And I bring this up because, as Dr. West has said, when asked, why aren't you running as a Democrat? Because this is what the Democrat Party is. I can't support them. The Democrat Party is what, if we assume, and I'm willing to assume, that AOC really did, that her heart was in the right place, if it isn't now, something corrupted her. Some entity or some individuals caused her to turn away from some kind of humaneness, so that she ultimately voted against the striking railway workers. So she ultimately attacked those who called for humane treatment of immigrants. She called people who said we have to treat people who come into this country without documentation. We must treat them better. She said, oh, you're a racist for saying that. She voted present rather than against the Iron Dome, which is what shields Israel from crude missile launches from occupied Palestine by people who are constantly being bombed and shot at by ultra-sophisticated weaponry. What caused her to become this new very less good AOC? What caused Barack Obama to brag about being good at killing people? Something about the Democratic Party, something about the power. We must move away from the duopoly. So more on, So the killing by Obama, the war criminal Obama, as the African exponent claims he is, calls him, as the Harvard Political Review calls him. Did it make us safer? Did what he did actually, because, you say, well, he killed people, but these were enemies they were our enemies. So what we have, the reportage shows, actually, and this is American, figures from the State Department and from the Department of Defense, of the 37 plus 100 people who were killed, the total number who may be a threat to us was closer to 100. Maybe under 100. A Stanford NYU joint study determined that for every dead terrorist, 49 innocent civilians got blown up. Now, some of you might say, well, that's too bad. They shouldn't have been in the same vicinity. By killing those terrorists, we saved each terrorist could have killed more than 49 innocents. The problem with that argument is that the drone program made us less safe. It made us hated. As retired General McChrystal stated, they're hated on a visceral level. We created enemies. Obama created more enemies by the drone program. All right. Just about the end of the program, I want to move on to my final point, because, what I really had started with was a question, if I'm being fair to Democrats, by ignoring Republican misdeeds. Republicans who, according to many of you, including my good friend Arlen, who will be joining us in a week or so, are even worse. So let me be fair. This was something that I remember reading when Trump was still president. I always felt like Trump was getting an unfair raw deal from the media, calling him a Russian asset, calling him conspiracy or colluding with Putin. Trump did some things that I agreed with in terms of trying to tamp down the friction with Russia, cutting back on some of the war activities that we were pursuing in the Middle East. But this really, really struck me, and I remember reading this, is that the arguments that Donald Trump is just a bad guy, this is very strong evidence. As bad as Obama was when it comes to the drones, killing civilians, I know he said he was good at it. Under Trump, the drone program was extended, was enlarged. So Trump was even worse. This is according to the Chicago Sun-Times. S.E. Cupp, sort of a more, conservative leading. I don't think there's any doubt. The numbers were clear. It wasn't just Cupp who reported this. So it's very, very important to recognize that as much as I criticize Obama, and this is not a pass, but, and I said, what about whataboutism? We all do whataboutism. Democrats who always get upset, well, they always say, well, what about Obama? What about Hillary, right? When they criticize Trump. But Democrats, every single time you criticize a Democrat, you get, well, what about Trump? Well, you're trying to help elect Trump. That's exactly that's exactly whataboutism. If I criticize Obama, I'm immediately targeted as being somebody who's trying to help Trump. So the response to, well, yeah, maybe Obama did some bad things, but what about Trump? So both sides do it. We always are going to do this. Ultimately, when you vote for the president, you have a choice. And if you choose one, you're not choosing the other. If you criticize one, you are, in fact, helping the other. So the whataboutism is something we all engage in. And to a degree, it's fair. But it's only fair if you're willing to acknowledge the fault on both sides. And you're willing to say, okay, well, this is really bad what so-and-so... The drones that Obama fired, that program was terrible. But in fact, Trump was even worse. That's fair. What's not fair is, oh, how dare you criticize Obama? Because what about Trump? The fact of the matter is, the duopoly is awful. Both parties are, the leadership of both parties is terrible. And to the extent some decent people get elected, especially on the Democratic side, they very, very quickly lose their way. They very, very quickly lose whatever morality, whatever humanity drove them into that whatever good intentions they may have had. And just so you get this again, this is from another source, or I guess it's from the same article, but here's S.E. Cupp's evidence. Trump carried out 176 drone strikes in Yemen, far, far greater numbers than Obama carried out. And he also carried out many more strikes in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, and hit it. Didn't want you to know about it. Here Trump was worse. Both parties were terrible. Both parties did terrible things. Trump was worse when it comes to the drones. That's fair. That's correct. I don't think the difference, dramatic as it may be when it comes to drones, I don't think the difference between the parties when it comes to war and pro-defense, pro-invasion, pro-empire, it's structural in both. It's systemic in both. The only way we're going to get out of this is if we go in a completely different direction, and that means we must elect Dr. West president. Vote for Dr. Cornel West for president. I'll be back a week from Monday. Have a great week.